Today we're going to talk about comic book page layout. We're going to take a small written section of script and turn that into a quickly sketched out comic book page. Let's get started. Welcome back to Spectre Comics. I'm Mike. If you haven't been here before, consider subscribing to the channel. I do a lot of video tutorials on comic book creation just like this one. Today we're going to talk about comic book page layout. We're going to take a sample section of my current script, which is Spectre Comics issue number 7, and we're going to translate one scene out of that and do a comic book page layout, lay out the panels, the dialogue, locate the characters, talk about setting the scene, and I'm going to kind of walk through as I'm sketching what I'm doing and how I'm translating that into the page that we're going to be drawing. So let's get started. All right, here's my script. My script is a simple Microsoft Word file. I just type it up, I print it out, I keep it with me. I make notes in the margin as I think of things that I want to change or some maybe enhancements. The circled numbers represent where a page starts. The arrows indicate where, if I stop drawing in the middle of a page, where I left off, just to kind of remind me. This is the scene we're going to be drawing. Spectre and Arco reach the bottom of the chasm. Before we even do that, I want to talk about overall book format. All my books have the same format. The inside cover is blank. The first page that you see is a character page with the images of the main characters, their names below that. The first paragraph is a Spectre backstory summary, and then the second paragraph is a summary of the last issue in case you haven't read it in a while or never read it, just to kind of give you some background of where we're picking up. You flip the page over, we get Spectre website information, social media information, all Spectre comic links, and Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, some copyright information and disclaimer on anything in the book, just to protect myself. Then we have the title sheet, which is the Spectre logo, the issue title or the chapter title if it's part of a trade paperback. And then you flip the page, we get right into our story and get into our first 2-page spread. Now, before we start sketching, last thing we're going to do is just introduce you to the characters so you know who's in the scene and who are part of the Spectre group that we're going to be drawing. So the main Spectre team is Spark, Risa, and Storbo, and then they each have a robotic counterpart, Prox, Eco, and Blip. The two characters on the bottom left are Arid and Kepler. They're the High Council leaders they report to, and then Arco is a new character I created just for this storyline, one of my favorite new characters that I created. Okay, so if we look at the last scene the characters were in before we rejoin them on the page we're going to be drawing, you can see them rappelling down the side of a cliff. So then there's a page break where we go to another scene and then we pick up with the characters. So we're going to kind of pick up with them reaching the bottom of the chasm that they just climbed down. I'm going to establish a wide shot by doing a wide panel all the way across the top of the page. And then I'm just going to start drawing heads to kind of indicate where the characters are. And this just gives me an idea of who's where in relation to who. I'll go ahead and kind of just add a little detail in. I'll sketch their bodies around it, and knowing that the action they're performing right now is just kind of reaching the bottom of the chasm. So, you know, Storbo here on the left is still kind of just climbing down. He's still got his arm up extended to a rope. Spark has kind of reached the bottom. Risa has already come down. She was the first one that was kind of leading the pack down the edge, so she should be there first. And then Arco also has reached the bottom. What I'm really trying to do is just kind of get something on paper. I don't really know, how this scene's going to look, but at least once I get them on paper, I can kind of modify it. Once I see where they are, I can move them around. I've already noticed that Arco is in the wrong spot based on where he was climbing down. He should be more in the center of the group, but right here he's on the edge. And just for continuity's sake, I'll probably move him later. Just kind of drawing the background, drawing the cliff. Now I actually want it to be more of an extreme angle. Since we're looking up the stars, I put some X's in the top area indicating that the sky is going to be a black starry sky in that area. The most likely scenario is that I'll modify this page quite a bit, but at least I have a starting point to work off of. What I'm doing is I'm actually sketching on printer paper with a border that I created. I created a video on how to use a template to create a border page like this, and I use this border page because it's the exact proportion of the way the printer I use prints. And so that is just a good way to kind of keep inside the lines. And then I can scan this page in to my printer, scan this into Photoshop, and then copy and paste it into my border pages. And then when I start inking, and then I just start drawing a new layer of ink over these sketches. So after I draw the wide shot, I kind of look at my script. I see who's talking next, what they're doing. In the next line of dialogue, Storbo is giving Blip an order to kind of come and help him, give him some light. Blip is a little floating robot who can kind of hover, and he can turn his eyes into like flashlights. So he swoops around here, and I like to show motion, so he'll have a little trail behind him, just indicating that he scooted across and twisted around the scene, shifting sides, and getting in front of Storbo and kind of shining a light down on his bag. So while the characters are talking to each other, it makes it more realistic if they're actually doing something instead of just standing and facing each other talking. So I usually have them making a gesture or playing with some device or doing something that's part of what they're doing. Now in this scene, they're reaching the bottom. So the bottom of a cliff, they just climbed down a cliff. They've each got backpacks and satchels as they're going on the next part of their mission. And so what they're going to be doing, what are they going to be doing when they get to the bottom? In my head, they're going to be putting the ropes away, or they're going to be taking stuff out of their backpacks or satchels for the next phase of the mission, maybe weapons or some tools. I know Spark asks Storbo later in the scene to pull out a scanner and give him a scan of the area. So a tool that I've established in these comics, he'll pull that scanner out of his bag and he'll, start using it. My character sketches are overall very loose. I just kind of want to indicate where the characters are. I used to get a lot more defined in my pencils, but since now I can actually go straight to my digital tablet and ink right on the tablet instead of inking on paper, I don't have to be as precise with my lines, and it just gives me an opportunity to sketch really quickly and get the information on paper. It saves me a lot of time because I don't have to be as detailed. Even if this is drawn completely wrong or I change my mind later, at least something's on paper. I have something to work with. It's always easier to edit than it is to create from scratch. When you're looking at that blank piece of paper and you're trying to figure out where the camera is and who's where and what angle to use. And I'm not somebody who uses a lot of dramatic angles unless it's needed. Some people put a lot of action by shifting panels. I'm pretty straightforward with my panels, straight lines. Sometimes I'll put some angles in there. I don't usually overlap panels. Once in a while I do, but a lot of people think it's a lot more dynamic. I think it's not as easy to read. I don't like doing that myself. I'm not saying it's the wrong way to do it or it's bad. For my own comics and the way I read, I'm pretty straightforward with the panels, panel layout. I usually just make it simple. You read left to right. Unless there's some extreme need to change the panel layout, I'm pretty straightforward with my panel layout. Next scene here, Arco is gesturing to the journey that they're about to go on by pointing to dangers that are out there. So again, part of his dialogue is translating into the action he's gesturing to the rest of the group. It's better than just having him stand there looking straight ahead saying, over there's a problem. And I'm still constantly going back to my script. So as I lay the panels out on the page, go back to the script, see who's talking, and always indicate where they are in the scene. So there's always some context clues. I don't always have the ability to add backgrounds. If I have a couple characters in a small panel and I have dialogue, there's not always a lot of room to add dialogue or background information, like indicators, like a tree or a rock or something that's in the background. But when you can do it, it's good. It just adds to the scene. It does save time though. There are some times where you could just have the characters standing there and there's no background behind them. It saves time. What I have open areas like that, what I end up doing is I add some shading or some little indicator of shade in the background. Maybe it's kind of on an angle, or it makes a jagged shape, just to kind of give the background some sort of filler. Sometimes when I'm drawing the dialogue in, adding the dialogue in and showing the balloons also allows you to kind of know where the text is going to be, or at least gives you the opportunity to add room for the text. I don't always know where the balloons are going to be, or I may shift them around, but it gives me an idea if I can fit the text in the area. It also helps me lay out, like, you're not only laying out a page, but you're laying out the panels individually. And you have to know where the characters are, how much of the character you're going to be showing, and where the word balloon is going to be. And you always want to keep in mind that you're always going to be reading left to right. So the first character in the talking, the balloons needs to be to the left and maybe higher. And then the second person talking in a scene, the balloon is to the right. Because you don't want to, it's kind of a cardinal sin of comics to cross your arrows. If the character over here is talking first, his arrow is going to be, shooting off this way. If the dialogue doesn't fit, I just write it where it fits, and I'll fix it later. I may have to shift a character down or move them over so that all the text fits. And when you get to the end of the book, or when you finish a page, I go back to my script, I mark where I ended, I mark the next line of dialogue is where the next page is going to start, so I circle that number. And then this is the finished page. So that's how I take my script and quickly turn it into a sketched out comic book page. I obviously sped up the video of me sketching to save time. The page took me roughly 25 minutes to draw. I wish I could draw that fast as the video showed. But the page was relatively simple. There was mostly characters. There wasn't a lot of complex backgrounds and vehicles and buildings, which would obviously add to the sketch time. It wouldn't take too much longer because that stuff is still loosely filled into the page. But there wasn't a lot of pre-planning involved. It was really just kind of putting the characters in their place, showing where where their dialogue was, so you can read it with continuity and everything was clear. Anyway, hope you liked the video and found it helpful. If you did, it would be great if you could hit that thumbs up button. If you have any questions or quick sketching tips to share, go ahead and put that in the comment section below. Don't forget to subscribe to see future videos, and we'll see you next time. Thanks.